Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you listening right now. Thanks to all of you, including Philip Less, Howard Yermish, John Atwood, and we got 2 new patrons, George and Sean.
Yay,
Welcome,
George and Sean. Welcome.
On this episode of DTNS, Flipboard paves the way forward for the Fediverse, why the U.S. wants to ban TP-Link routers, and Netflix makes the Squid Game free for everybody. Scott's going to tell you why. This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. In Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
From Studio Animal House, I am not Mario, but I'm Sarah Lane.
Hi, from Salt Lake City, I'm Scott Johnson.
And the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Wow.
Yeah. Sometimes you just get in a rhythm and it comes out weird. That's what happened there.
My entire podcast career is based on this.
You do a daily show enough times and you're going to have some weird days.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes.
But the weirdness ends here. It's all useful information. Let's
right.
start with the quick hits.
Oh, man.
Oh, Tom.
I hate it.
OpenAI's shipmess continues. The company is now giving users a new way to talk to ChatGPT by literally calling 1-800-ChatGPT. This is not a joke. This is not a drill. Along with using WhatsApp for the same service, the callers get 15 minutes free per month. For the 1-800 number, you can call without an account, but OpenAI said it's working on ways to be able to integrate WhatsApp messages with a person's ChatGPT credentials as well if you wanted to call WhatsApp instead.
Just to keep you updated, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments on January 10th about whether the law requiring ByteDance to divest TikTok USA or face distribution restrictions is constitutional or not. Those of you who already are keeping score know that that's 9 days before ByteDance's deadline to divest or have distribution restricted. Usually the Supreme Court does not rule in 9 days, but thanks to Fred for submitting this on the subreddit.
NVIDIA's Jetson Orin Nano Super Developer Kit is an AI development board that promises 67 TOPS for $249, about half the price of the previous 40 TOPS model. NVIDIA says users of the current boards will get a software update that will improve that performance by 70% as well.
Instagram's Adam Mosseri announced Tuesday that Threads is testing the ability to schedule posts. You would also be able to schedule posts in DMs, but you won't be able to schedule replies so that conversations around the post stay in real time.
RW Nash submitted this one in our subreddit. Thank you, RW. The beta web version of Apple Maps now has a look around feature. This is similar to Google Street View. If you've used Look Around, it works like Street View, but it is much more limited because Google's been at this game quite a bit longer. What you can do with Apple Maps now on the web version is pick a spot on the map, get a 360-degree street-level view of what's around that spot. Binoculars icon and select cities works in Australia, Canada, the EU, UK, and US. Again, select cities. You can try Apple Maps on the web and use Look Around at beta.maps.apple.com. Back in the olden days when the iPad was new, Flipboard debuted as a social magazine of sorts to browse various feeds visually. A lot of it actually came from magazines and just stuff that pulled more content that was visual and worked well on the iPad. Then social networks, including Twitter and Facebook, but they aren't the only two, walled off their gardens in a big way, hindering third parties such as Flipboard, including Flipboard itself. But current day Flipboard still does exist. You may use it, but if you were sort of like, oh yeah, whatever happened to Flipboard? That was kind of fun. It is currently letting users follow content from feeds like Mastodon, Threads feeds as well. And on Wednesday, the company announced a new app called Surf. It's still in beta. It has a wait list, but it is designed for iPhone, Android, and iPad users. Different from Flipboard itself. But the idea for Surf is that Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads, RSS feeds, podcasts, YouTube videos might all be something that you are watching anyway and you are hanging out on, and they can all be remixed into a custom feed. Each feed has tabs like watch, discuss, read, listen. The whole idea is not only can you create a feed, but you can build a feed and then share with others. That kind of creates a siphon of news that is is meant for you or meant for somebody else. Then, of course, others can follow various feeds, create their own. I love this idea, and I think that part of the reason I love this idea is, first of all, I was a very happy Flipboard user back in the day. And it did end up sort of becoming truncated when I still used an iPad regularly. It didn't work the way that it did in the early days because, of course, companies like Twitter and Facebook at the time were sort of like, no, we want you to come here. This is the whole third-party stuff. We're going to have to put the kibosh on, some of this API stuff. What I love about what Flipboard is doing with Surf, at least in theory, because I don't have access to it now, is this may be one of the solutions for someone like me who's like, I want to use Blue Sky. I want to use Threads. I want to still use X. I'm definitely on Instagram. I follow a variety of RSS feeds. And could that somehow be a place where I just open up an app and kind of browse through everything rather than going to everything specifically, alone?
I'm with you on the OG Flipboard love when that thing came out. I think what I was most impressed with at the time was not so much that it was tying these disparate sources of news and information together for me, but that it was such a cool, revolutionary interface that I got to sort of build out and decide how I wanted it to be and who I would follow. And there's been a million apps since that sort of try to do a lot of that. But I think at the time anyway, this did this as good or better than anybody was doing it. And I loved it. So to my chagrin, when things started stopping in terms of API support for it, and it wasn't really useful in that regard with your social feeds, you just sort of saw it start to die on the vine, and it bummed me out. So to hear that they're working on something that will essentially, in a lot of ways, bring back the original spirit of that app and do a little bit more is very exciting. So yeah, count me in on Team Excited about this thing.
Yeah, I think it's almost unfair to compare this to Flipboard. It's the same company, but I think what they're doing is a very interesting and different thing. They are trying to make it easy to not only consume the decentralized web, but to use it in ways that you can't otherwise. So right now you can only sign in with Mastodon, so it's not really going to work well as a cross-posting tool yet. It might do that at some point. They're working on that. But OpenVibe is probably a better option if you just like, I just want to post and read and reply across multiple services. I do think what they're doing is way more interesting than just cross-posting, though. What they're saying is you want to follow the Utah Hockey Club, right? You can pull in anything that's being posted from Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads. You can add your own RSS feeds from the actual hockey club, from your favorite sports news source. You can put podcasts in there, and then you get all of the best information from around the web presented, and this is where the Flipboard stuff does matter, in a nice, easy to read way. It's a good looking app. And it breaks it down. I love that it breaks it down by watch, discuss, read, and listen. And you can choose which one of those comes up first. So you're not dealing with an algorithm, but you're getting some of the benefits of an algorithm, except you control it. Or you find somebody who you trust who's created a feed that you like, and you just glom onto that one.
Yeah.
I wonder how many, as a enthusiastic iPad user back in, since 2010 when the iPad first launched, Flipboard was one of the first killer apps where I was like, this is amazing. This is exactly what the iPad is for. Loved it. In fact, that was how I consumed the majority of my news for a couple of years. And yeah, like you said, Scott, it did fall by the wayside through no real fault of Flipboard's own, but I wonder how much this is also something that someone who's like, well, I don't have an iPad or a tablet, but I'm an Android user, or I have a, older iPhone, and I still want to use this, because Flipboard has always been very visual. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, if you're following a podcast feed, it's like, okay, you're going to get the album art, but the rest of it is just going to be one play button, right? It's not that visual. You're listening to something rather than looking at it.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that would be cool along the lines of what you're saying is if this was not just in app form, if I could just get this on the web. I'm a big fan of, if you're going to have, an app, you ought to have some web equivalents, and they ought to have some feature parity when possible. This doesn't always happen, and a lot of stuff is different. than they are on the app than they are on the web. But I would love to see that, because then you have less of a platform specific issue happening where, well, I don't have that tablet, so I guess I'm not going to be able to use that app. I think there's an opportunity there to get a broader audience. But as someone who is pretty steeped in the iPad ecosystem, I very much look forward to this, because like I was saying earlier, the spirit of what Flipboard did was unique at the time. It was letting you curate all of these things into one little place and kind of made a magazine out of it. Like you'd open it up, literally, it would feel like a magazine.
Very magazine-esque. That was the point.
Yeah. And you chose the articles, and the social media that would pop in there was stuff you wanted to see. And it wasn't nearly as specific as what they're working on here and what Tom has laid out. But that's what I'm looking forward to, is that taken to a whole new degree. We've got a lot of learning under our belt. I'm a little surprised it's taken them this long. And I hope it's not an ad nightmare, because that is what Flipboard became. And I don't just mean too many ads, just a lot of low quality ads, like garbage ads inside of that thing. So I have high hopes for this, and nobody's been able to quite nail it. Apple's News is not great at doing what I had hoped it would do. Google's News app is okay, but not perfect. What I want is that feeling I had from the original Flipboard, but the kind of functionality as laid out in this new app sounds very exciting. So
I would say forget Flipboard. Just I'll repeat it. Forget this is from Flipboard, because I think if you compare it to Flipboard, you're missing some of the benefits of it, and you're probably thinking about it wrong. This isn't meant to be something that is magazine-like. That's why they're keeping Flipboard, right? This is meant to make it easy to access information. And they're using their Flipboard design shops to make it look good, but it's meant to be used on a phone. I'm with you, Scott. They're in beta, and maybe they'll get to it. I think there should be a web interface so you can access it wherever. But this is taking advantage of the fact that there's enough people on the decentralized web now that you can pull from multiple parts of it and get that advantage. And that is something you can't do on Facebook. You cannot do on X. They are blocking you from doing that. Right. And if there is a future for the decentralized web, I'm not saying this is the guarantee of the future, but this is the kind of thing it needs. And it looks pretty good to me.
Yep.
All right. Officials at the U.S. Department of Commerce, the U.S. Department of Defense, and the U.S. Department of Justice have all opened investigations into router maker TP-Link, which holds approximately 65% of the U.S. market. Look to your left, look to your right. One of you owns a TP-Link router by those numbers. TP-Link is popular because it's cheap. It's always got the lowest price or close to the lowest price. It's also the official router provided to customers of more than 300 US ISPs. So if you don't think you have a TP-Link router, go check. The one you got from your ISP, if that's how you got your router, might be from TP-Link. Several U.S. government agencies have TP-Link hardware, including the DEA, the Defense Department itself, and NASA. So what's happening here is just an investigation, but this is how it started with Kaspersky. They started looking into Kaspersky and then decided the Department of Commerce didn't need anybody else to sign off on it, that it's a security risk. You can't get Kaspersky antivirus in the U.S. anymore, and it's gone. You can't get it here anymore. This is different than TikTok. They don't have to pass a law to do this. They can just say, look, you failed to patch security flaws. You have discontinued models that are a current security flaw. You're a Chinese-based company, which is a country of interest. You're done. You're gone. You can't be sold here anymore. Now, your routers will probably keep working for a while, but most likely they wouldn't be allowed to get updates. That's what happened with Kaspersky and why it had to pull out as well. So this means that unless larger trends change, unless the U.S. and China start warming up to each other in the next year, you're probably not going to be able to get a TP-Link router or possibly even an update for your TP-Link router in the next year.
That was my big question, is enforcement. And you answered it partially with, yeah, you'll keep using your router. It's not like they're going to shut down the day this decision gets made.
Yeah, they don't require you to remove it from your home. Right. Certainly they'll require it to be removed from the Department of Defense and NASA and all those places.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you want updates, you're probably out of luck because they're not going to allow those to come down. So, I guess as a consumer, like just regular old consumers, if you've got some of these, you probably just need to start shopping for replacements. If the security matters to you in terms of like being up to date and patched, you're about to have a router that will never be patched again.
Well, one of us has several TP-Link.
I have 4, one of which I bricked because I was trying to put open word on it and didn't work too well. Actually, it did work well, and then one day it stopped working. I actually do have a TP-Link router. I have a Archer A7, which is a one that the C7, which they integrated in with Amazon's voice assistant. I have each one of the units I've had. I've reflashed the firmware into open source, so it's either DDW. It's actually all DDWRT at this point, and I only use 2 of them as Wi-Fi access points. But one of the reasons why I actually flash it is because TP-Link is notorious for having really slow and very abysmal security updates. So anyone who has a modicum of security consciousness will will immediately jump to a third-party firmware, or they buy like a Ubiquiti router or something like that from a company that's really known for putting the hammer down on security.
Now, that is the argument that they're making in this investigation, is that they're very slow with their patches. Security flaws remain open for a long time. There have been actual botnets identified by Microsoft as recently as October that were mostly made up of infected TP-Link routers. I don't know whether they're the worst example of this or not, but they're certainly not the only router maker that is accused of being slow to fix their vulnerabilities. And they were founded in Shenzhen, China. So to me, that locks up the case. I'm not saying that justifies it or not, but that they are not going to pass this investigation because they, like many router makers, have these slow security updates, and they are from China. Now, they tried to reorganize and say TP-Link Corporation Group is now headquartered in Irvine, California, with offices in Singapore. But I don't think that's going to wash because they still have TP-Link Technologies Company Limited in China. And in a court case around a patent earlier this year, a U.S. federal judge rejected the argument that there was no relationship between the U.S. and the Chinese business.
Wow. So unlike the TikTok situation, something could happen there. Something could move. You don't think this has any chance of resolution outside of the ban?
Resolution to this would have to be on the trade negotiation table. I assume TP-Link would probably take this to court if the Commerce Department issued an order, and they would probably lose.
Yeah.
And I mean, as for the market, I mean, there's a wide variety of routers, of which, you know, the most well known are either like your Netgears, not D-Link anymore, but Link System, Cisco,
and its sub-brands and all that.
You know, the
Cisco and sub-brand, Cisco and Netgear routers were used in the Volt Typhoon, not Salt Typhoon, different one. The Volt Typhoon attack on critical infrastructure in the U.S. So it's not like TP-Link is the worst offender. Like, the more serious attacks are being conducted on other routers. But it is. I mean,
during our conversation, my router's just to the left of me. I was like, oh, let's find out TP-Link, and there's some very, very, very small text on the bottom of it that I will need my glasses to read. But I'm like, I don't even know who makes this router, and I think a lot of people would say the same. I don't know. I mean, I went through Spectrum because that's who's providing my internet service, but I'm pretty sure the router is from a third party.
If you're getting your router from an ISP, they will replace it. Like if this were to happen. And again, the investigation just started. It's not going to resolve until sometime next year, and then it's going to take some time for the order to go into effect. But I'd say by the end of 2025, there might be something happening. So it's good to know about it ahead of time. And if you're the kind of person who wants to put OpenWRT on something like Roger, you could do that.
And I would underscore what Tom was saying. Regardless of who makes your router, make sure you do the security updates on it, because it is kind of the gateway of the internet into your home. Yeah,
absolutely.
In fact, it is exactly that.
It literally is how most people's internet. I guess my phone is another way in, but it's the biggest one. If you have feedback about anything that gets brought up on the show and you'd like to get in touch with us on the social networks, we have tried to make it as easy as possible. At DTNS Show. That is our handle on X, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Mastodon. if you want to know the Mastodon server, it's mstdn.social, but it's at DTNS Show. If you're looking for video, it's Daily Tech News Show. That's our address on TikTok and YouTube.
Variety reports that Netflix will make its upcoming Squid Game Battle Royale game, Squid Game Unleashed, free to non-subscribers for a limited time when the game launches on December 17th. Although the company hasn't released a hard window for free play, it's good through at least the premiere of Squid Game Season 2, December 26th. We've got a few days. Netflix previously made its mobile game offerings available only to paid subscribers, so this is a little bit of a divergence for them. Scott, what do you think?
Well, I actually think, I don't know how controversial this will be, but I think this is a pivot point for them. There have been a number of times on the show, Wednesdays in particular, where these Netflix stories seem to crop up about what they're doing with gaming. And they seem to be sort of poking their foot in a little and then pulling it out a little and then canceling a thing and then launching a thing and then canceling that later. So it's kind of all over the place and they get criticized for that. But I find it fascinating because I think this is just watching them do what they do. They're experimenting and they're trying new things. And when those things don't work out or generate a lot of buzz or views, they drop it. Interactive programming being the most recent version of this where, you know, they got rid of a lot of their interactive shows. And I think this may be a sign of a pivot point for them. And I'm basing this theory on the idea that if they're going to put out something for free, and say, hey, coinciding with the season 2 of Squid Game coming, we're doing this big battle royale style Squid game. We want as many people in there as possible. That's not what they're telling us, but that's what they need on their end. They need to have this full of people or else this game just plain does not work. It needs volume. So that's one way to do it, is say it's free. You don't even need a sub to the thing. Maybe you saw Squid Game season 1 on DVD or something and you still don't have a Netflix account. Fine, no problem. Come download it. You'll have access to it.
Yeah.
What this gives them is two things. One, big audience for the game they need to succeed. But secondly, I think it will determine the future a little bit. It will determine whether these free-to-play event-based games become standard for them if this succeeds. It also could sort of tell the future about whether they want to have everything under a paid umbrella or if free-to-play, as currently constituted in lots of other genres, is another way that they can go and be outside of the sub. That may sound crazy, but again, they're experimenting, and this one feels like a big one. Like they're going to make a decision here based on this information. They'll gather data, they'll find out how many people came in, and they'll also find out how many of those people converted to accounts, because you're still going to need to log into this stuff. So that conversion rate will matter. Like there's a lot of stuff, a lot of data that will come out of this that will determine what I think will be whatever the future of Netflix gaming is.
It also, so Squid Game, I watched the first season, traumatizing, but very enjoyable as well. It's a game, the show itself is a game. So I think the fact that you can't, Netflix being like, and now we've got this fun complementary game that makes plenty of sense, rather than trying to make a choose your own adventure type thing out of another popular series, which, some people might have liked, but I think Netflix has struggled to make that a thing that people think of shows, as a thing that they can have fun with and do, outside of the show. Squid Game is a game. It's all about, like you race to the death type thing. So I think Netflix is being very strategic here, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
I also think, to your point, that this is a game based on a game. There's an automatic connection there, and I agree with you that is good for the potential of the game. Them deciding to make it free to play drives a couple of points home, which is come play this game for free. Even if you don't know what Squid Game is, everybody loves, Fall Guys and what's the other game that's Fortnite. These various games that people like to play that are free to play. That may drive them here because there's some zeitgeist around Squid Game that brings them in, and that may either convert to subs to Netflix itself and therefore to their library of games, or not at all, and that's what we learn. Like that's why I think this is important, because they're going to learn if this works or not. And this moment is a big one for them. So, it's not like anybody's going to lose their shirt over it, but in typical Netflix fashion, they will respond accordingly, and that will either be, we tried, forget it, let's try something else, or this sticks and we see more of it.
I assume they do that to everything they do, right? Netflix is very analytics driven, but you're right. Part of what they want to do here is see what they learn. Love Island did this without making it free to play. Yeah. Love Island is very popular, less popular than Squid Game, but the game ended up being very popular with the fans of Love Island. So I think they saw that and were like, well, shoot, what if we do that with something that's mega popular and not just niche popular with Squid Game? Because when you make it free to play, and I know you touched on this, but it's worth reminding people, it's going to bring in people who don't have Netflix accounts, right? Maybe they saw season 1, maybe they just heard about it, but they're going to want to play this because they'll look at the trailer and go, oh, that looks bloody and fun. Let me try it. And then that might make them sign up and watch Squid Game season 2. Like it's no coincidence that they're letting this continue up until Squid Game season 2 is out because they want people to sign up for Netflix and watch that season 2. And they want to see how many people play it. They get to stress test their game servers. There's a lot of different things they can learn out of this and a lot of benefit they can get from it too.
Yeah, I agree. And I think either way, this just is, again, part of this is how they do it over there. Whether it's successful in the long run, I don't know. Like there tends to be a bit of a slapdash method to the games industry as a whole. Everybody is cranking and cramming literally overtime to get things done and whatever time clock they think is important. And this is not that. This is them going, this will coincide with the show. So yeah, we do have a little bit of a time limit on this, but what we're learning from it, we'll just kind of take it slow. We don't, and again, I don't think any of this is going to be like overnight. I think this is going to take a while for us to see the results from it. And I'm actually looking forward to it. I want to see what this game's like. That's an important aspect of this. The game needs to be good. So there is pressure there. If the game's crappy, then nobody's going to care.
Yeah, then it's not going to work at all. But yeah.
We'll see.
It's the #1 show on Netflix worldwide. So they're going to learn something, and I think you're right. It's going to help inform what that Netflix game service is going to be, while also probably driving some people into subscriptions.
Yeah,
I'm actually more interested in the Love Island game. I didn't realize there was one.
I'm
not a huge Love Island fan, but I know what the show is about.
Yeah,
can only imagine.
You get to be on the island when you play the game.
Well, and get picked. Pick me.
Yeah. All I ask about the Squid Game is that there's no cookie licking competition. I hate that part of that show. It makes me want to die every time I see it. I don't want to
ever see it. What, the Dalgona thing?
Yes.
Well, that was another question I had. It's not really important, but how many of the games in the trailer are actually in season 2 and are spoilers, and how many are just games they made up for the game?
Right.
And aren't going to be in season 2.
Yeah, these are all great questions.
I would think that the games would more or less be different, right? Otherwise, you're like,
there's probably a mix. There's probably a couple of these games that end up being in season 2, but probably more that aren't.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're running from the
everything
giant.
That happened in Squid Game, Scott has the biggest problem with the cookie licking.
When you're running away from the big giant lady face, the doll face that turns around and catches you when you're running, that's definitely in there. Beyond that, I don't know what competitions are in there. So I'll bet there's some that are not in the show entirely.
That's what I'm wondering, what that mix is. Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, let's check out the mailbag.
Let's do it. Over on Patreon, Anand Jr. had some thoughts on our Google Whisk discussion that we had on Tuesday's show. Anand Jr. wondering, is it an attempt to work on a model more narrow in scope that does a better job than a more general model? I could also be sold on the idea that it was mentioned that this is for helping to guide people in what you can do, like being the solitaire of image generation. And Anand Jr. says, at this point, I now feel old for remembering that solitaire was included to teach people how to use the mouse. I'll go ponder things over my floppies of DOS 6.22 and Windows 3.1.
And Reversey. Don't forget Reversey. Also, regarding our discussion from Friday on Waymo getting certification for emergency responses, Kevin writes about seeing one in action while he was in a Waymo in San Francisco. I was making a turn. Right in front of the Waymo was a four-way stop with a concrete truck backed up across the four-way stop, almost blocking the intersection. I saw the flagman waving the Waymo around the truck with the detour. While I was waiting for Waymo to just pull over and wait, I was shocked to see the Waymo turn and follow the flagman's directions and the car recalculating a new route to my drop-off. After that, My jaw was on the floor. But now, after your discussion, I guess this is all programmed in. All I can say is color me impressed.
I haven't been in that kind of situation in a Waymo personally. It's always just sort of been regular old traffic. But I was coming back from traffic yesterday, kind of peak LA rush hour. And there were definitely some people kind of doing weird left turns, just that kind of day where you're like, all right,
Yeah.
let's just
Yeah,
get
yeah,
at
totally.
it. Too many people on the road right now. And the Waymos were just cool as cucumbers, just hanging. Yeah.
Nice.
Just dealing. Yeah.
They don't get upset. They don't get road rage.
Yep.
Not yet. Fingers crossed. Scott Johnson, you don't seem like a road rage person to me either. But when you're not on
Because
the
Kim drives.
Yeah, Kim drives, and she gets so mad. She gets very road ragey. She'll never hear this, so I can say it out loud, but she's the kindest, sweetest person you'll ever stand next to. You get her behind the wheel and do something dumb in another car, all bets are off.
well, sometimes
I pity the fool.
Yeah. Well, go Kim. But Scott, when you're not being a passenger in a road rage situation, where can we find your work?
Well, you really don't want to drive with me. I'm not great. You can find, speaking of video games and the industry talk in general, I talk about Core on here all the time, and I recommend people listen to it. But the exciting thing is we are coming toward the very end of a year that has been packed full, despite all these layoffs and all these problems within the industry, some of the best games in a decade. And I'm not even sure why they've been so good this year, but we're going to count all that stuff down soon. So we need your ears and eyes on the show so that we can do that with you. Check it out. That's over at frogpants.com/core, or you can find it wherever you get your shows.
Don't forget, folks, we have stickers. Stickers of me, Sarah, and Roger are still available. Great last-minute gifts. They are $4.99 each or $12.99 for all three, and the shipping is free. You don't pay for the shipping. Taylor just sticks them in an envelope and sends them to you. Just head on over to dailytechnewsshow.com/store. Patrons, stick around for the extended show Good Day Internet. We're going to call ChatGPT live on the Show.
What
Who
could
knows
possibly go
what's gonna
wrong?
happen? Right.
Oh, this will be fun. But you can also catch our show, DTNS is live, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is 2100 UTC, and you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We're back doing it all again tomorrow with Justin Robert Young joining me and Rob. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.